fellow scientists. My name is Jesse, and I'm a member of the Saskatchewan Science Center's Go Science outreach team. Today, we're going to get our hands dirty, and we're going to talk about the substance that covers our Earth, soil. So soil is the stuff that covers the top layer of the Earth. It's a mixture that's made out of several different materials. These materials can get broken down into two different groups. You have biotic factors and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are all the pieces of soil that are living or were once living. This would mean things like plants, insects, microorganisms. Those are all examples of biotic factors. Now, abiotic factors are basically everything else. They're all of the things that are in soil that aren't really alive. So those would be things like minerals, water, or air. All of those things are considered abiotic factors. Many of the really important parts of soil are those abiotic factors, even though we wouldn't think so. This would include minerals that are important like phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogen, which all help support plant growth. The mixture of these abiotic and biotic factors can make soil very unique. That uniqueness can either help a plant grow or actually make it harder for that plant to grow. Certain soils will actually be better for certain plants rather than other ones. Another factor that is important for how well a plant grows is the soil's acidity. Scientists measure acidity by measuring the pH of the soil. The scale goes from 0 to 14, and a pH of 7 is what we consider neutral. If soil or another substance is acidic, it's going to have a pH that's lower than 7. And if the soil or substance is more basic or alkaline, it's going to have a pH above 7. So when we talk about the acidity of the soil, that is going to help determine how well that plant is able to absorb certain nutrients. If the soil is too acidic or too alkaline, it could halt the growth of the plant or even kill it outright. Let me show you how we can test the acidity of this soil I got from outside the Science Center. Now, this container is filled with soil I gathered just from outside, and to gather a really good sample, I dug down about 10 centimeters into the earth and collected all of this. So, from here, we're going to take a tablespoon of this soil and we're going to put it into a clean beaker. There we go. We're going to move all of our extra soil out of the way there. We just have our 1 tablespoon there. Now, we're going to actually top it all off by using a little bit of this distilled water. We have to use distilled water to top this off because distilled water has a neutral pH of 7 and it also doesn't contain any contaminants. So all those contaminants could actually affect how well or how poorly it will do on this test. So now that we have that all put in there, we're going to grab a popsicle stick here. There we go, our handy dandy popsicle stick. And we're going to give it a good old stir. As we stir, we're getting all of this soil to kind of start dissolving into the water. And as it starts to dissolve, it's going to impart its acidity on that water. So I'm going to stir that just a little bit more. There we go. There we go. All stirred up. Now is the important part. We have some mucky water here, but what we're going to do is we are going to filter this out by using a coffee filter. So I have a new beaker and I have a funnel here with a coffee filter inside of it. We're going to put that right beside it and we're going to pour all of this just into that. Now, as we give it a little bit of time, gravity is going to pull all of that water through that filter and into that clean beaker. So this takes a minute. So we're gonna have to wait for all of that to drip through. All right, So now that we have a little bit of liquid filtered out there, we're going to be testing this by using a piece of litmus paper. So we're going to get rid of this funnel. And litmus paper is a type of paper like that is dyed with a whole bunch of chemicals. These chemicals, when they reach a certain pH or they go into a substance of a certain pH, they change color and they help us be able to tell what the pH of a substance is. So we have our litmus paper there. We are going to dip it inside of our liquid here. And we're going to let that sit there for a second. And we're going to see what color it ends up changing. All right, so now we've given it a little bit of time to kind of work its magic there. We're going to match it up against our container here. And wouldn't you know it, our soil out there has a pH of around 7. So that pH of 7 is something that's really important to the plants that are in Wascana Park, where all of our soil was actually gathered from. Other areas might have different acidities, and plants might grow better or worse in those areas based on that acidity. Well, I hope you guys had fun getting your hands dirty today. You can also check out some of our other experiments by visiting SaskScienceCenter.com and clicking on the Real Science, Real Fun Online button. Stay curious, fellow scientists.
Hey, how you doing? Tommy Tungsten here for Elements R Us with another super special sale. You bet your behinds, folks. It's potassium. A total bombshell of a deal. If you leave it sitting out on its own, it'll rip apart the water vapor in the air and go boom. Now, we all love a good explosion, but potassium prefers to hang out with other elements, where it does all sorts of other great stuff that is essential for life. Living things need to take in potassium as an electrolyte, which is a fancy term for stuff that helps living things move by helping electricity get around their bodies. You also might have heard that bananas is rich in potassium, but them banana plants and all other plants need potassium in the soil because it helps them take in sunshine and make the energy they need to grow our favorite fruits and vegetables. Now, to make them fertilizers, a whole lot of potassium is dug up by miners as part of a salt mineral called potash. This stuff got there a long time ago when really old oceans dried up. Now that sounds like a lot of work if you ask me. So if you come down to Elements R Us for all your potassium needs, there ain't no mining required. Hey, and when you get there, tell them Tommy sent you. Capiche?
Hey everyone, my name is Jacklyn and I'm from the Saskatchewan Science Centre, and today we're going to be talking about the parts of the flower. If you would like to follow along with this dissection, all the supplies you're going to need are going to be found at home. So some things that you're going to need is some flowers, like I have right in front of me. You're also going to need a blade of some sort, so you can use a paring knife. I right here have a X-Acto knife that can be very useful. And also optionally, you can have a magnifying glass. Today we're going to be looking at parts of the flower. So I have a diagram here with me with the parts of the flower. Specifically, we're going to be looking at parts of the lily. You've probably seen lilies in people's gardens or on walks. They can be found in nature as well. So we have in Saskatchewan the western red lily. That can be found all over the province. They're usually bright orange and can be very attractive to pollinators. Flowers can either be female or male, just like animals. But what's cool is that some plants can actually have both male and female parts, which is what we're going to talk about today. So lilies have both of these parts. So first, we're going to take a look at our whole flower. So we have our stem, leaves, and our full flower here. Each of these parts are very important. So we have the stem, which obviously holds up the flower. It keeps it closer to the sun, as close as possible. But it also supplies nutrients. It delivers nutrients from the roots all the way to the flower. Leaves and stems both are very green. You've probably noticed that in many plants. What's important about that is that the green is actually what helps plants support or absorb all that sunlight to make those sugars that they need in order to grow. So stems and leaves have a pigment in them called chlorophyll, which looks green. But what's actually happening is the sun is shooting in a bunch of different colors. It's shooting in red, green, blue, all those different colors. It absorbs a lot of that red and that blue, and it bounces back a lot of that green, which is why our eyes perceive a lot of that green pigment. So they're all very important in order for this flower to have these beautiful colors and to be able to grow up big and strong. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to cut off the stems and the leaves and separate so we just get a flower. So I'm just taking right here, and I'm also going to take these other ones off that aren't open. All right. So now we have this beautiful lily, this beautiful flower here. And we also have some closed ones here. So what we're going to talk about here is actually called the sepals and the petals. So the sepals you can see on the outside here are these nice green leafy looking petals that actually protect the bud on the inside. So you can see on the flower, you don't really see any of these sepals. They actually are there. You can see with this nice progression that they actually turn color and match the petals. So any of them on the outside, so this is a sepal, and the ones on the inside here are petals. So petals are very important. They change color, or they have this beautiful color for a purpose. And that's to attract a lot of those pollinators, because we need pollen in order to make our seeds. So we have this beautiful orange, but flowers come in all different shapes and sizes and colors, which is also very important. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take apart some of these sepals and some of these petals so we can get a closer look here at what all these petals look like. So I'm just going to put these away. So now we have all these nice, here are my sepals and here are my petals. You can kind of see a little bit of a difference here. So these ones are a little bit thinner and these ones are a little bit thicker. So these are our petals and these are our sepals. I'm going to put these away. And next, what we're going to look at, we have the inside here. So you notice these big kind of funny hat looking things. These are our anthers. So we're kind of moving into these male parts. So the male parts of this flower are very important. That is where the pollen is created. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to point out here, I don't know if you can see very well here, but we have actually some pollen, and you can see on my finger it's actually falling off. So this is very good. This is a good time when flowers are going to be spreading their pollen. I'm just going to take one of these off. So we have what is called the stamen. So on top we have, this is all a stamen. On top here we have an anther. And we have the filament. The filament is used just to hold up the anther and deliver nutrients and stuff like that. The anther is what's important because that's creating all those pollens. So there's nice pollen sacs in there that all kind of burst together. So you can see on my finger here, there's some nice, this orange gritty little pollen pieces, and there's millions of them on each anther, which gives you very good chances of spreading your pollen to other flowers or to the same flower. So we can take all of these off. And here you can see that we have lots of different stamens, or we have lots of stamens. So let's see if we can take this anther off. So now you can see how much pollen is actually coming off and falling into my hands. So you can actually draw with this kind of stuff. So if you have a piece of paper, you could actually just take it and spread it across, and you can make lots of cool designs with the pollen. So I'll move these off to the side here. So now it doesn't look like we have much here, but there's actually a lot of really important parts. So right now, this is actually called the carpel. So if you have multiple carpels, it's called a pistil, but we have one carpel here. So it's split into 3 different parts. So we have the stigma at the top, then in the middle here we have the style, and then this green part at the bottom is called the ovary. So I'll kind of go in order here, starting at the top here, we have the stigma, and so you can see there's lots of this orange stuff. It's actually a lot of pollen that has fallen on here. So normally if there was no pollen, it would actually be very sticky, which helps create attraction to the pollen so that if it stays on there, because pollen actually needs to travel down. So it's going to travel down the style. That's the purpose of it. It's to transfer your pollen from the stigma to the ovary. So what I'm just going to do here really quick, I'm just going to cut off the stigma and the style here. And what we're left with is the ovary. So I'm also just going to cut off the bottom here. We have now just the ovary. The ovary is a very important part. This is the female part. So this is where the eggs are held and are produced. So once they are fertilized by the pollen, so once they travel all the way down, they will create seeds. So we're going to try and cut this open, and we're going to see if there's actually any unfertilized eggs in here. Sometimes it might be a little bit hard to see. So you can kind of see here, there's some tiny little dots in there. There's a big row of them. You can see, I'll point out right here. You can see these are all the eggs, and these are called ovule when they're unfertilized, and then they will eventually become seeds once they are fertilized. And so when they become seeds, all the other parts of the flower are going to fall off. So we have all the petals and the sepals, and all those kinds of things are going to be falling off, and we will eventually have a seed, which will be able to grow into a new flower and do the process all over again. So that's the basics of all the parts of the lily. While lilies are a great representation of flower parts, not all flowers are going to look exactly the same. Like I had said earlier, some flowers only have female parts and some only male. Some may have more or less stamens, pistils, petals, or sepals. I encourage you to explore flowers and how their anatomy is arranged. All flowers are unique, but still smell and look beautiful all the same. If you like this video, please check out our website for more fun science. And thank you all for watching this video, and I hope you try this dissection at home.
Hello everyone, my name is Sally Science, and I love it when you send in your curious questions for us to explore together. And today we have an awesome question from my friend Eddie.
How can we get more butterflies in our garden?
Thanks so much for this great question, Eddie. I love butterflies too, and I know that our world would benefit greatly if we had more of them flying around our gardens. That is because they, like bees and other flying insects, have an incredibly important job in making sure our ecosystems stay diverse and healthy. You see, butterflies aren't just beautiful to look at. They are also what we call pollinators. Bats, birds, animals, insects that help move pollen from one flower to another flower are called pollinators. And this process is called pollination. And it's especially important because without it, plants could not produce seeds or fruits. And that's how they produce more plants. And many of the plants they pollinate become the food we eat. Ha! Don't you just love how everything in our world is interconnected? So let's go back to your question, Eddie. Since we just learned how important butterflies and other pollinators are for helping plants create new seeds to create more plants, how do we make sure there are lots of pollinators, including butterflies, in our gardens and our ecosystems? Would you believe me if I told you that butterflies had a sweet tooth? Well, it's more like a sweet tongue. Good one, Sally. It's true. Butterflies love the sweet, sticky juice that flowers produce called nectar. Fun fact, butterflies have a really long tongue called a proboscis. They use it to reach deep into the center of the flower so they can suck up that sweet nectar they love so much. How cool is that? The magic of pollination happens when the butterfly drinks the nectar because as it sips that sweet, juicy nectar, it moves around the flower, and the pollen, which is that yellow powdery stuff you sometimes see in the middle of a flower, sticks all over the body of the butterfly. And then when the butterfly flies to the next flower, some of that pollen falls off of its body into the second flower, and it mixes all together to pollinate that flower. And if that flower belongs to, say, a vegetable plant, like maybe a squash, the flower that's pollinated will eventually grow into a squash. How amazing is that? Do you see how important pollinators are? So, to have more butterflies in our garden, we need to plant flowers and vegetables that have a sweet nectar for the adult butterflies to eat. But butterflies are also drawn to color, and butterflies are usually excited about flowers that are red and orange and yellow and purple and pink. Some of the native flowers that you can plant in your garden that are the right colors and just the right amount of sweetness to attract more butterflies include the blanket flower and Asiatic lilies and echinacea, or coneflower as sometimes it's called. Fun fact, butterflies are nearsighted. That means they can't really see things clearly unless they're really, really close to something. I bet you that's why they like these bright, bright colors. Now, flying from flower to flower all day is exhausting. So having some rocks in your garden for the butterflies to land on and have a little rest makes your garden more welcoming for those butterflies. And don't forget, butterflies get thirsty too, and they need water just like you and me. So maybe in your garden, put a little shallow dish of water so that the butterflies can land and have a nice drink. Thanks so much, Eddie, for this awesome question today. If you have a question you'd like to explore with me, Sally Science, please send it to me. I would love to hear it. Have an amazing day, friends. And this is Sally Science, signing off.